Getting your environment right makes a huge difference when it comes to sleep, and that is what the Pod 5 Ultra is built for by our sponsor, 8 Sleep. It's a smart cover that fits over your mattress, keeps each side of the bed at your preferred temperature, as low as 55, as high as 110 degrees. It'll adjust as you sleep. It tracks your patterns. It can even detect snoring and slightly reposition you to help you breathe. Get up to $700 off the Pod 5 Ultra. It's 8 Sleep's biggest sale of the year. Go to 8sleep.com/Pakman and use code Pakman. The link's in the description. If you do anything that requires taking notes, could be calls, could be meetings, classes, or creative projects, check out the Plod Note Pro. This is the smarter way to capture everything. It's a credit card-sized device, 4 studio-grade mics that pick up voices clearly, even when people are talking over each other. And unlike just recording on your phone, you don't lose battery, you don't get interrupted. And Plod also goes further because in the app, it transcribes in over 100 languages. It'll summarize key moments. And with Ask Plod, you can search conversations or brainstorm like you're working with a second brain. Check out the Note Pro at davidpakman.com/Plod or use the code Pakman for 10% off their other products, the Note or Note Pin. The link is in the description. The President of the United States slurred his way through a disastrous Veterans Day speech, even struggling with God Bless America, and told Americans that if they die, they should die without complaining. He also praised Mike Johnson as a great man someday, and rambled about France celebrating World War II and lied about firing thousands of VA workers. And then things got worse as the administration is now saying it cannot guarantee airplane safety when flying. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy went on TV to say exactly that. And he also attacked air traffic controllers for not working for free during the shutdown, questioning their patriotism. We'll also talk about the Epstein earthquake hitting. The 218th signature is about to force a vote on the Epstein files. They are swearing in at Alita Grijalva, and Trump is panicking because new emails have dropped showing Jeffrey Epstein said Trump knew all about the girls, and they were even coordinating answers with Epstein during the 2016 race. We will also look at the nonstop lies from the Treasury team, claiming inflation is down, claiming manufacturing is back, saying every baby's getting $1,000 and every American $2,000 and every air traffic controller $10,000. None of it's real, but where would we get that money from anyway? And finally, former football player Pat McAfee gives Trump one of his most embarrassing interviews of the presidency, even though it was supposed to be easy. We'll have a full breakdown of the chaos, the collapse, the propaganda. And also, we are now over $12,000 raised for the hunger charity Feeding America. Every new membership's first payment, be it monthly or yearly on my website or Substack, is going right to Feeding America. We've raised over $12,000 so far. Check it out. We've got a show for you. Donald Trump delivered a slurring and disoriented Veterans Day speech, maybe his worst speech on Veterans Day ever. Trump's history with the vets isn't great. As we know, Trump got a very strong letter about the ankles in order to avoid being drafted to Vietnam when he was younger. And since then, he's said stuff like, I've always wanted a Purple Heart, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is better than the Congressional, and a whole bunch of other horrible stuff. The event did not exactly have an auspicious start, as Donald Trump, seemingly knowing only the first 3 words of God Bless America, which are God Bless America. That really seemed to be it. Not good.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside
All right, so it only got worse from there. Donald Trump visibly confused and slurring about Veterans Day, Victory Day, the French, the Russians. What on earth is this guy talking about? Nobody has any idea.
As you know, today is not only Veterans Day, but it's my proclamation that we are now going to be saying and calling Victory Day for World War I. Victory Day. You know, I was recently at an event and I saw France was celebrating Victory Day, but we didn't. Oh. And I saw France was celebrating another Victory Day for World War II. And other countries were celebrating. They were all celebrating. We're the one that won the wars. And I said, from now on, we're going to say Victory Day for World War I and World War II.
Right.
And we could do for plenty of other wars, but we'll start with those two. Maybe someday somebody else will add a couple of more because we won a lot of good ones. But when I see other countries celebrating Victory Day, I watched it. I watched UK. I watched Russia. They were celebrating Victory Day, World War II. And I said, we got to have a Victory Day. Nobody even talked about it.
Really inspirational, and you can tell Trump is deeply and spiritually connected to the plight of veterans. Trump also declaring, if we die, we must die, and we as men, we die without complaining. Really a wordsmith like no other.
Dear God, he said, we ask only this, that if we die, we must die, and we as men would die without complaining, without pleading, and safe in the feeling that we have done our best for what we believed was right.
And if that doesn't make sense to you, don't feel bad. It doesn't make sense to anybody. But I think the president was trying to refer to those who fought and died for their country in military service, which are the very same people that he and that he had said to John Kelly were suckers and losers during his first term. So your mileage may vary on Trump's patriotism and devotion to the veterans. Trump talking about firing people, I guess, from the VA, who he says were sadists, sick, and thieves.
And the other thing is we fired thousands of people who didn't take care of our great veterans. They were sadists, they were sick people, they were thieves, they were everything you want to name, and we got rid of over 9,000 of them. And then when Biden came in, he hired them back, many of them, but we got rid of them. And I think we got rid of them permanently. We replaced them with people who love our veterans, not people who are sick people.
I looked into that and was not able to find any evidence that that is true. It just doesn't really make any sense to me. Trump also talking about how other countries hold events where they celebrate winning wars that we actually won, which is, of course, a complaint like no other that is hugely disrespectful to the veterans from our allies who fought alongside us. Trump doesn't seem to respect them.
You know, I was recently at an event and I saw France was celebrating Victory Day, but we didn't. And I saw France was celebrating another Victory Day for World War II. And other countries were celebrating. They were all celebrating. We're the one that won the wars.
They were celebrating. We're really the ones who won the wars. Now, the veterans I know have great respect for the allies of the United States who fought beside them. Donald Trump doesn't seem to respect the veterans from our allies. And then finally, in a weird moment, dare I say Kafkaesque, Donald Trump saying that MAGA Mike Johnson is a great man, not necessarily today, but someday he will be known as a great man.
And we're also honored to be joined by a great man. He will go down as a great man someday. Speaker Mike Johnson. Speaker.
Someday, not today, but someday Trump will go down, or MAGA Mike Johnson will go down as a great man. Listen, it's very clear that on no level does Donald Trump really value or respect our veterans. Trump, you know, I did a thing with Adam Kinzinger yesterday, former Republican congressman who's also a veteran. And I said, you know, aside from whether we agree with every mission troops are sent on. I really respect people who choose to join the military, and they are responsible for me not having to. And that is a really big deal. Trump got a letter to avoid being drafted. So we know for Trump, it's less about, hey, if there were a draft, you just get yourself a letter. He's not really connected to the sacrifice and the meaning. But this guy is the furthest thing from someone who respects vets, respects the troops. And in fact, policy has been basically the opposite. And on Veterans Day, we looked at what's happening with aviation. It is not so good. The Trump administration's transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, former reality show contestant, says that the government cannot guarantee airplane safety. Now, how did he mean it? Well, let's play the clip. There's a lot to talk about here.
Listen, you can walk outside. I can't guarantee your safety. You get in your car. I can't guarantee safety, but I have to look at the risk in this system. And then we have to make decisions based on that risk and based on that pressure.
So even before Sean Duffy said he, as Secretary of Transportation, cannot guarantee the safety of air travelers, we still knew that we had an MTV real world contestant running the Department of Transportation. We already should have been afraid. But this is now extra disgusting. Now, I know that there are those who are looking to sort of minimize what Sean Duffy says by saying there's no guarantees in life. You know, you can do all of the safety checks. You can do all of the maintenance. You can go through every procedure correctly. And sometimes planes can crash, or you walk out of your front door and you get run over by the garbage truck. You just don't know. There's no guarantees in life. That's the way that they are sort of lining it up. But the truth is that American aviation typically is extraordinarily safe. And among questions as to whether safety is diminished in the current circumstances, Duffy, rather than saying, no, safety is not diminished, he just goes, listen, nobody's really safe from anything. I can't guarantee anybody's safety. And in the context of this, he threatens air traffic controllers who didn't come to work during the shutdown. Remember, they weren't getting paid. Some of them had to take second jobs. And Sean Duffy goes, I'm concerned about the patriotism of the air traffic controllers who called out. Forced, mandatory patriotism.
The president's also talked about penalizing some of these air traffic controllers who took sick time. So can you talk about what that plan would look like there?
Well, my concern is for those air traffic controllers who, before they missed a paycheck, and we were in the shutdown, they decided.
That is such a sleazy thing, by the way. Before they missed a paycheck. You know what that means? Do you know what he's talking about? What he's saying is there was a period during the shutdown before their next check came in, during which they technically hadn't missed the paycheck yet. But they knew they weren't getting paid. They knew that they were showing up for hours for which they would not be paid. And many of them went and had to work an additional job. They hadn't yet missed the paycheck. Give me a break. They were working for free.
On a continual basis, not to show up for work. They don't know how long the shutdown was going to be. They hadn't missed a pay period, and they didn't come to work. I'm concerned about those controllers. I'm concerned about their dedication. I'm concerned about their patriotism. And so we haven't made a decision, but we are going to look at those controllers who continually made the decision not to show up for work.
Can you imagine? It's the start of a new pay period. You wouldn't be paid for today for 10 or 14 days anyway, but you're going to work for free. Oh, well then, since I haven't yet missed the paycheck, then I should just be happy to be here. He expects them to work for free. And of course, many had second jobs they had to go to since they knew they weren't getting paid. They were going to be getting a missed paycheck. Finally, Duffy says there are going to be issues in the airspace. We might have airlines that say, we're grounding our planes. That is how serious this is. Well, it would be nice if we had someone in charge of this stuff to fix it, right?
Earlier you mentioned that if the House does not vote or if the government does not reopen, there would be massive disruptions this weekend. Can you quantify that in terms of like a percentage of flights canceled?
So I can't quantify, but in my conversations with the airlines and with the FAA and what we're seeing with air traffic controllers, we feel there are going to be significant issues in the airspace.
Yeah.
To quantify it, I don't have a crystal ball for you, But I can tell you what we're seeing with all of our equities, there will be real disruption.
Yeah. If only we had someone in charge of the country's transportation system who could work on this stuff. So this is a reminder, or it's a callback to some structural realities about Republicans and the federal government. To a great degree, the shutdown is the policy. Break the FAA, and it becomes greater proof that the government can't do anything. Maybe we should deregulate. Maybe we should privatize. They use this playbook with USPS. They use this playbook with CDC. They use it with public education. They've used it with Social Security. Air traffic controllers were not getting paid. They were stressed, some of them unable to afford childcare or medicine or health care. And Duffy flips it into a loyalty test. I'm concerned that some of these air traffic controllers who weren't here, many of whom were working other jobs where they were getting paid, they might be a little bit unpatriotic. We've got to be really worried about that. And this is classic authoritarian psychology. You demand sacrifice from others and you offer none. You go back to 20th century authoritarianism. It is a classic. And you've got a society slipping into chaos. And some of the first systems to fail are the ones that are high complexity, low margin for error. High complexity, low margin for error. Air traffic control is one of those. Power grids are one of those. Healthcare is one of those. If the FAA is saying it's going to be chaos and we can't guarantee safety, that is a sign that the state is losing its ability to manage complexity, and complexity and Donald Trump do not exactly go together. Sleep is the one thing that affects everything: focus, energy, mood. Most of us treat it like an afterthought. The Pod 5 Ultra by our sponsor 8 Sleep helps you get the most out of your sleep every night so you can wake up feeling your best. The Pod 5 Ultra is a smart system. It fits right over your existing mattress. It'll automatically adjust the temperature of each side of the bed throughout the night so that it will adapt to the sleep patterns of both sleepers. The Pod 5 Ultra can even lift your head if it detects snoring so that you can breathe better. It has built-in sound, white noise, meditations, whatever helps you fall asleep. And 8 Sleep also has a new full-body comfort blanket that extends the temperature control all the way across you. Get up to $700 off the Pod 5 Ultra. It is 8 Sleep's biggest sale of the year. Go to 8sleep.com/Pakman. Use the code Pakman for up to $700 off. The link is in the description. If you have calls or meetings for work like I do all the time, or you're taking notes for classes or creative projects, you know it's really easy to miss important points. Check out this tool that will really revolutionize how you take notes. It's the Plod Note Pro. It's a thin credit card-sized device, attaches to your phone, captures crystal clear audio with 4 studio-grade microphones, and up to 50 hours of nonstop recording, even when multiple people are talking. But Plod will go way beyond just the recording, because then you've got the app. It'll label who's speaking. It can transcribe in 112 languages. It'll deliver structured summaries with highlights and to-do lists generated from the conversation. And they also have this Ask Plod feature where you can actually search conversations or draft follow-up emails or brainstorm ideas, really like having a second brain. Now, unlike recording on your phone, you don't have to worry about your battery running out. No interruptions. Your data just stays safe with end-to-end encryption. I've been testing Plod myself. It makes meetings way easier. I don't worry about missing anything. So go to davidpakman.com/Plod, check out the Note Pro, or use the code Pakman for a great discount on their other products, the Note or the Note Pin. The link is in the description. This is an audience-supported program, a progressive, independent media show, and the best ways to support the work that we do are getting a membership on my website, joinpakman.com, or getting a Substack premium subscription at substack.davidpakman.com. Now, for the month of November, we are raising money through membership for the hunger charity Feeding America. This is a phenomenal charity that supports local food banks. Every first payment from new memberships or gift memberships this month will be sent directly to Feeding America. And so far, thanks to your support, we've raised over $12,000 and supported over 120,000 meals, which are wild numbers. head on over to joinpakman.com or substack.davidpakman.com. Get yourself a membership, and that first payment, be it monthly or yearly, in its entirety, will be donated to Feeding America. History is being made today, and Donald Trump's worst nightmare is about to become a reality because we've had months of stalling and delays and desperate attempts to block this moment. But the Jeffrey Epstein files petition is finally getting its 218th signature. Now, let me explain why this matters, why Trump should be worried, and we have new developments just hours ago. Newly elected Representative Adelita Grijalva, who's a fan of this show, was on the show, and hi to her kids, who I was told are fans of the show. She will be finally taking her rightful place in the House of Representatives. This is not routine political business because it is going to trigger something the White House really wanted to prevent, which is a forced vote on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein case files. Now, Grijalva is expected to provide, and she told me she would, the 218th and final signature on a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Now, if you're not familiar with how this works, a discharge petition is a tool that lets rank and file members of Congress bypass leadership. And if 218 members sign one, a majority of all 435 House districts, they can force a floor vote on anything, even if leadership is against it. And that's what makes this extraordinary. This is a bipartisan effort. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie has joined Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. They're spearheading this and they are moving forward. When you have Republicans and Democrats working together, you know it's serious. Now, I want to be clear about what happens next. It's not over. Think about this as game one of a series. Once Adelita Grijalva signs, there are 7 legislative days which must pass. This is called the ripening period. We know we've ripened mangoes, right? So we know what that means. You need the ripening before a member can move to bring the petition to the floor. Then Speaker Mike Johnson has up to 2 legislative days to schedule a vote. So the earliest we could see an actual House floor vote is probably not until the first week of December, once you account for days off for Thanksgiving and the entire thing. Now, Donald Trump knows what's coming. This is a bill that would force lawmakers, especially Republicans, to choose between, are we going to side with Trump or are we going to back the release of files, which could put a spotlight on the crimes of the convicted sex offender and potentially expose Donald Trump's involvement. Now, I have to be upfront about the obstacles ahead. Even if this passes the House, it would still have to pass the Republican-led Senate. And it is not clear that that is going to happen. We also have a situation where Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said to CNN he doesn't think the chamber needs to pass this. And when asked whether the Senate should vote on the bill, he said, I don't really know what that's going to achieve. And don't forget that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer attempted to force a vote back in September on a similar bill, but Senate Republicans killed the measure. And we need to be thinking about whether that might happen. Now, you might say, well, if the path forward is so difficult, why is this important? It's going to force accountability because every single member of the House is going to have to go on record. They will have to declare, I want transparency, or I want to protect whoever is in the files. Is it Trump? Is it other people? We don't really know, but they would be on the side of protection rather than transparency. It is political gold of sorts because this is information voters deserve to have. Voters deserve to know my elected official voted for transparency or voted to help the cover up. And so I see this as a bigger moment than just partisan politics. This is like a fundamental question. Do our elected officials believe in transparency and justice, or do they believe some people are above the law and deserve to be protected by some of the most powerful institutions that exist in the country? Trump has spent months trying to prevent this day from coming. He has called the effort a distraction. He's dismissed it. He says no one cares about this. And his allies have done everything possible to delay it. But we now are finally getting that 218th signature. The procedural wheels are in motion. Will the files ultimately be released? Remains to be seen. But what I can tell you is that Trump and every single member of Congress will now have to answer for their position on this issue. And for a guy who has spent his entire life avoiding accountability, That is a nightmare scenario. So the game is on. The country is watching. We are soon going to see where this lands. But in the midst of all of this, there are some stunning, explosive emails about exactly this issue. We have to talk about what just dropped from the House Oversight Committee. This is massive. House Democrats have released emails written by Jeffrey Epstein himself, which contradict everything Donald Trump has been saying about his relationship with the convicted sex offender. These are explicit claims that Trump knew about all of it. He knew about Epstein's abuse of young women or girls. And also, it appears as though there was coordination about what would be publicly said about that. The House Oversight Committee got these emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. They are from 2011 to 2019, meaning these were all written after Jeffrey Epstein's suspicious plea deal down in Florida. The first email is from April of 2021, and it is Epstein writing to, it is from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell here. And he says the following: I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim, which is redacted, victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Think about what Epstein is saying here. The dog that hasn't barked. He's saying Trump is the person who could have spoken up. He could have exposed Jeffrey Epstein. He spent hours at Epstein's house with one of the victims. But Trump didn't say anything because, as Epstein then claims, maybe Trump himself is implicated. And that's why Trump hasn't spoken out, because he is accused in this email by Jeffrey Epstein of having spent hours at Epstein's house with the victim. Ghislaine Maxwell's response was, I've been thinking about that. Now it gets worse. In January of 2019, Epstein is emailing with Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff is the same author who writes the tell-all books about the Trump White House. And Epstein writes the following: victim redacted, Mar-a-Lago, blank redacted. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. That is to Michael Wolff from Jeffrey Epstein, saying, of course Trump knew about the girls. Not maybe he suspected, maybe he inferred. Of course he knew. Of course he knew. And according to Epstein, I'm giving you the full information. Trump actually intervened at some point. He says, told Ghislaine to stop. Now, then it gets even more interesting. We have another email from December of 2015. This is during the Republican primary. Michael Wolff warns Epstein, CNN is planning to ask Trump about your relationship. Epstein's response here is, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? The idea here is Epstein is trying to help Trump figure out, what do you say? They're trying to strategize, how do we handle media questions? This is during the campaign, years after they supposedly had this falling out. And at least from this email, there's the suggestion that they would be helping Trump craft an answer for this. Michael Wolff responds and says, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey's a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. I want to be intellectually honest here. We don't have the full email chains. Trump has never been charged with any crime related to Jeffrey Epstein. But you've got to look at the pattern, which is Trump consistently lying about and minimizing his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There's video of them partying together. Trump saying Epstein's a terrific guy. He likes beautiful women as much as I do. And some of them are on the younger side. The Trump administration promised to release the Epstein files. Then they backtracked. They're fighting House efforts to force the release. if Trump really has nothing to hide, why not release everything? And these emails certainly suggest Trump knew much more than he has acknowledged. And now we have Epstein's own words saying that that is the case. Even if Epstein is lying in these emails, why would he lie in private emails? These were not public statements meant to brag about anything. It doesn't make sense. So the emails raise major questions about what else the White House is hiding. We have a president who has repeatedly lied about the relationship he had with a notorious sex trafficker. We have emails suggesting Trump knew about the abuse. He stayed silent about the abuse. And we have an administration that is hiding documents that the public deserves to see. I want to once more mention, this really is about the victims who are almost never talked about in this context. These are women now, many of them abused as teenagers, who deserve to know the full truth about everyone who was complicit in the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Trump, as of this moment, and in fact, I will double check whether there's any additional declarations or explosions on Truth Social. No, as of this moment, Trump has not weighed in on it. But I would expect at some point that he says it's a hoax or whatever. The emails are real. The emails exist. They're specific, and they appear to be completely and totally devastating. Do people realize that they are being lied to about everything that this administration is currently promising? Is there anything that this administration won't lie about? Here is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has gone through a number of the promises that Donald Trump has made, and he is saying things that I don't believe. He is saying things many in my audience don't believe, but are the MAGAs falling for this stuff? Here is Bessent saying very soon, every child born for the next 3 years will get $1,000 invested in the stock market. Take a look.
The president has thrown out, and I'll just tell you what he said to make it shorter. He said, hey, I'm thinking about $2,000 stimulus checks coming from the tariffs to everybody and 50-year mortgages. First off, on the $2,000 stimulus checks, isn't that like using your overdraft to pay off your credit cards? Or isn't it like, taking money from a credit card and paying off your bills? Do you think that that's the most financially responsible thing to do?
Well, there are a lot of options here. The president's talking about a $2,000 rebate, and that would be for families making less than, say, $100,000.
Have you decided on that yet?
We haven't. We haven't. It's in discussion. But the other thing to think about, Brian, is that what we did with the tax bill is actually financing the president's no tax and tips over time, Social Security, and the big refunds you're going to see are a result of that. So that's another payment to the American people. And then the other thing you're going to see in the middle of the year are these Trump accounts. Every child born retroactively to January 1, but for the next 3 years, is going to get a $1,000 account that's going to be invested in the U.S. stock market. So,
all right. So listen, in theory, in July of next year, there will be these Trump accounts made available. They will be retroactive to 2025. My younger baby daughter, in theory, would qualify for that. If that does come to pass, I will be honest with you, and I will tell you about that. And it would be $1,000 in her account. Cool. But the $2,000 that they're talking about, it's not clear at all that that is going to happen. And we're going to go back to that in a moment. But they are framing all of this up with dishonest lies. Here is Bessent also today on Newsmax, shamelessly lying, saying everything that's happened is inherited and everything is going great right now.
And we came in, we inherited a mess. We have brought the inflation down. And Rob, there are two ways for curing affordability. There's bringing inflation down, because some of the prices we are going to be able to bring down. So energy prices, gasoline,
down quite a bit.
4-year low.
Yeah.
4-year low.
Understand that electricity prices are up 10%. The mess they inherited is one where inflation has basically been flat. Inflation has been bouncing between 2.5% and 3% for a while now, predating Donald Trump taking office. Remember that there are a lot of people, they are taking advantage of people who don't know the difference between inflation coming down and prices coming down. If inflation is above zero, prices are going up. If inflation goes from 5% to 4%, inflation has come down, but prices are going up. The rate at which prices are going up has slowed down. And this is, it's sort of like what is calculus? Calculus is measuring the speed to the change of something. So you could say, okay, imagine you're in a car, right? You hit the gas. In the first 10 seconds, you go from 0 to 60. And in the next 10 seconds, you go from 60 to 90. Well, the speed at which you are accelerating has slowed down, but you are still accelerating. And that is what we're talking about here. The price level continues to go up, but not even at a lower rate, at the same rate as it was towards the end of Joe Biden's presidency. But Bessent just lies, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't know the difference. Here's another one. What Bessent is asked, what is the Treasury doing to reduce job insecurity? He just straight up lies.
What does the Treasury Department and the dollar itself in your job have to do with lessening job insecurity in this country?
Well, I think what President Trump's doing in terms of bringing back high-paying precision manufacturing jobs to the U.S. is all about job security.
How many jobs have come back?
Sorry, that it's just starting. I was down in South Carolina.
Translation, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Trump is bringing back high-paying manufacturing jobs. Oh, how many? Well, none yet. Oh, in fact, we've reported on this data. The manufacturing index has declined. And for all of this talk about bringing back manufacturing jobs, the United States has many open manufacturing jobs that it turns out a lot of Americans don't want. They don't want, presumably because they don't pay enough. You've got to offer a higher price for labor if you want people to take some of these jobs. Even Bessent admits when pushed, well, none of it has actually happened yet. The topic of the $2,000 dividend that Trump announced for everybody but the very wealthy, everybody's getting $2,000. Bessent was asked about that on ABC. Here's what he said.
You know, it could, the $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms, in lots of ways, George. It could be just the tax decreases that we are seeing on the president's agenda.
So it might not really be a $2,000 check. They might be tax decreases people have already gotten, even though most people have not gotten that.
No tax on tips, no tax on overtime.
The $2,000 dividend is from Trump removing taxes on tips, which, of course, most people who are in tipped jobs will not really be materially affected by that because of the way tax brackets are set up. Okay.
Tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans. So, those are substantial deductions.
So you're sending me $2,000. Well, I made interest on auto loans, tax deductible. So you're not sending me anything, right? Now, one funny thing is the idea is we're going to take the tariff money and send everybody $2,000. The problem is the tariff money is paid for by Americans. And so at best, you're returning tariff money that they are paying. The bigger problem is there haven't been $2,000 per American collected in tariffs. So the math doesn't work no matter what. I don't think people are getting anything. And then Bessent says, big picture, listen, it's all going to get better for everybody. It's going to be good.
And the American people are going to start feeling better. But look, this has been a tough period.
Which you feel like only 9 months in you inherited. But there are people that say the numbers are good on some areas, but I don't feel it. What do you say to those people who say, I don't feel it? Be patient?
I say that you are going to feel it, that I was just down in my hometown of Charleston, South Carolina on Friday, and this new Boeing plant is opening up. That's 1,000 new jobs that the president has brought back. I went to a rare earths plant up in Sumter, South Carolina, 800 construction jobs, 300 permanent jobs that they think could become 3,000 permanent jobs. And the great part of the story there is those were Caterpillar workers who had been laid off. Thanks to President Trump, a new factory has moved in.
Yeah. Now, a couple little details here. The South Carolina Boeing plant that he's referring to, as far as I know, is a plan that was in place predating Trump's presidency. I researched it. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with Donald Trump. This doesn't change the fact that overall the manufacturing job level is coming down. But we went very quickly from lower prices on day one to look for it in 2026. Are people falling for this stuff? I want to hear from you. Are people in your communities falling for this stuff? Leave a comment. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Have you ever wanted to feel more connected to your partner but found that daily life gets in the way? There is an app designed specifically to help couples deepen their bond called Paired. Our sponsor Paired gives you daily personalized questions, quizzes, fun games, really just crafted to inspire meaningful and enjoyable conversations with your partner. And you won't see your partner's answers until you've shared your own. So it's like a safe, genuine space for honest dialogue and discovery. Recently, one Paired prompt asked, what's something you admire most about your partner? Answering this simple question created a conversation with my girlfriend and highlighted things that we sometimes overlook. The Paired app is a great daily reminder of the qualities that make relationships special. Whether you're just starting to build your connection or you've been together for years, Paired helps make it easy and enjoyable to strengthen your relationship, and it's just 5 minutes a day. Head to paired.com/Pakman for a 7-day free trial and 25% off your subscription. The link is in the description. Donald Trump has already packed his second-term cabinet with loyalists. He's threatened deportation as political punishment. He's expanded executive authority in ways we have not seen in modern history. These are real changes that are happening right now. And what's even more alarming is that a lot of the media is either glossing over the worst of it or they're reframing it so it all sounds a little more palatable. And that is why I use Ground News. This is a news comparison tool. Doesn't just feed you headlines. It shows you here's how different outlets, left, right, center, are covering the same story. And this is one of the few tools I know of that can really help you detect the political spin, the bias, catch stories that your usual sources might downplay or not cover at all, on everything from immigration policy to economic shifts. If you want to get a bigger picture, a broader picture of what's being reported, Ground News is an invaluable source to keep you informed. And Ground News is offering my audience 40% off their top tier Vantage plan. You'll only pay $5 a month. Go to ground.news/Pakman or enter the code Pakman in the app to get started. The link is in the description. I had a great conversation on my Substack Live with former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. In the conversation we're about to hear, he explains why he never plans to vote Republican again. He talks about his new documentary. He explains his perspective on the Groyperism that is infecting the Republican Party and a lot of other stuff. This was a great conversation with former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. It's great to speak today with former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, also a veteran, joining us on Veterans Day, and we thank him for his service generally. And I specifically do, because for every person that chose to do it, it made it less likely I would have to. And for that, I am extremely, extremely grateful. Really good to talk to you. I'm glad we're able to do this.
Yeah, you too. By the way, I always want to say, thank you for paying your taxes, because that allowed me to fly America's airplanes. It was the best gig I've ever had in my life. And I kind of miss it. I had to retire. I kind of miss it.
Well, I contributed, I guess, in some way, some small way then.
There you go.
The documentary about you, really, is The Last Republican. It was produced by our friends over at Midas Touch under the Midas Studios umbrella. And it's really interesting. I encourage people in my audience to check it out. It's really, listen, I in a sense, it's sort of the movie equivalent of like Kamala's book and Jonathan Allen's book and Jake Tapper's books. These are books that people who follow the political space would be very interested in. And the film is sort of an audiovisual representation of that. I think my audience would find it really interesting. A couple of the things I want to ask you about. One is the film does portray
a number of different tensions. And so, for example, there's the tension between the Republicans who knew something was wrong, but didn't feel compelled to be public about it, and those who did, those who are in the sort of true believer category, and those who, like you, sort of thought more for themselves. Can you give us a little bit of the lay of the land in the party at the time that the election fraud claims were going on, at the time that the January 6th committee was going on? Like, how divided was the Republican Party really?
Really divided. And by the way, everybody watching it's more than just a political documentary too. There's a lot of human elements, and I would encourage Apple TV, Amazon Prime. But I have no financial interest in it too, so make that clear. But look, I mean, the GOP really, since the day I got elected, so I was elected in 2010. I mean, we were battling the far right in the party, and initially, the far right was, just this small part. I always make the joke, like, we do these things called Lincoln Day dinners, where it's the fundraiser for the county and the county party. And there was always like one table of weirdos, right? And so that was the weirdo table. But over time that grew. And then when Donald Trump came, that exploded, right? And basically that became mainstream. So after the election, the night of the election, Trump comes out, says, frankly, the election has been stolen from us, right? And that's where I'm like, dude, we have to speak out on this. The one thing about democracy that you need, the only thing, honestly, is a trust that the system to count votes works. That's it. Everything else you can disagree on. And so I started speaking out, and most of the people in the GOP, at least on the House side, agreed with me. About half of them would speak out. The other half were like, oh, just wait till December 15th when it's official. And then he'll acquiesce. And then it became, oh, just wait until the turn of the year. And then, oh, just wait until January 6th. And what you see is just this absolute like cowardice, right? And so there became really strong tension eventually to where it culminated, with the impeachment vote. And then there was that intervening time between basically January 6th and the very beginning of February, where I think the party could have gone a very different way. And I was trying to get the other 9 people that voted to impeach with me to basically take over the party, to just kind of declare like, hey, this, we're in charge now, right? Because we needed to take out Kevin McCarthy. He's the one that helped to lead this. And the other 9 impeachers, unfortunately, we're all saying like, hey, this is time to just heal the party. Everybody, I mean, really, to be fair, everybody thought Trump was done then. Everybody. Nobody showed up at Andrews when he left. But the thing that changed it, and the guy that owns Donald Trump's resurgence, is Kevin McCarthy. Because when he went down to Mar-a-Lago, when he got his picture taken with Donald Trump, the party's like, well, I guess it's Trump, and everything turned on a dime. And so, yeah, tons of tension, particularly then when I got on the January 6th committee. I mean, I basically became persona non grata. I'm still friends with the people I was friends with, but politically, you're basically kicked out.
Were there people back channeling with you saying you got to get out of this January 6th committee thing? Or was it basically like as people saw that you were speaking out and scheduled to be on it, it was sort of like people knew there was no talking you out of it?
Yeah, they knew. I mean, because the fact that I made the decision to get on it, I mean, that was, I equate it politically to like, hey, take that hill. You're not going to make it to that hill, but the guys behind you might, right? And so when you make that decision, they know. And plus, these folks know that I was always kind of I'm not saying this to sound like Jesus, but like a man of conviction, right? If I had my mindset to something, I'd do it. And look, here's the thing, man. The oath that you take, I think, forced you to have to vote to impeach and, to serve on the committee if asked. Unfortunately, there were only 2 of us that made that decision, but the oath is very clear: defend the Constitution. And that day, the Constitution wasn't defended. So, but I would still have, for a while, and it was maddening, and people would come up to me and be like, hey, thanks for doing it. I can't do it because my district's too Republican, but thank you. And I'm like, dude, my district is like super Republican too, but okay, whatever makes you feel good.
There's this thing that definitely happens on both sides to a degree. And I'll give you an example from the left. I was just at Crooked Con in DC over the weekend, and I spoke to, I'm not going to out anybody, but I spoke to like 5 people, prominent either lawmakers or like podcast independent media people who confided in me. My actual opinion about X thing is the following. I can't say that right now because the risk I would become PNG, persona non grata. And I think that this is terrible. It's a form of self-censorship. People in my audience, I think, would be shocked to hear who these people were and what the topics were. And I wonder, when it came to that in the Republican Party at this time, was it about, I'm worried Trump will target me if I do this? I just want to maintain access to power if he eventually comes back into power. Like, what was the motivator for people who had an opinion, but they weren't saying it?
So here's the thing that I if I forget, remind me, because I'd like to come back to how you opened it. I've come to believe that people fear more than they fear death. They fear being kicked out of their tribe. They also fear when you're a person with a title. I mean, keep in mind, when you're a U.S. congressman, any room you walk into, except in the White House, you are the most powerful person in that room and probably the center of attention. That becomes a pretty powerful kind of identity, how you see yourself. So I think a lot of it was they were fearful because they knew that they would have to basically give up their job to do it. And there's a sense of, I'll be kicked out of the tribe. I'll be excommunicated. And that's a scary thing. Trust me, I've gone through it. It's not fun. I think there was some of that. There's also, yes, Donald Trump can make an example of me, but the thing people feared the most was the base. The base of Republican voters that Donald Trump had turned into a cult. I mean, let's just be clear. Not every Republican is in the cult, but every one of the hardcore MAGAs, it is. And what you see in cult behavior, by the way, is you see a leader that basically creates this, do whatever I say, even if it doesn't make sense. You have that. But the one thing, and Democrats can learn from this, that Donald Trump does really well, is he forgives. Okay. So if you decide you want to come crawling back, I could do this tomorrow and I'd be in the White House tomorrow. If you decide you want to come crawling back, he'll allow you to. Now, the rule is you can never cross me again, but he'll allow you to come back. And that's a lesson to Democrats because, like, I interview people that leave MAGA all the time, and some of them just within the last few weeks, and the comments I get, from people that are, granted it's online, but it's just like, you should have known, to whoever I'm interviewing, or this is your fault, screw you. And it's like, listen, guys, I get it. And I think people that leave MAGA that want your attention have to admit that they were wrong, but we have to welcome them. I mean, because look, this last election, we lost because we didn't have enough people. So unless we're just creating more people out of thin air, we got to win people over. And I do want to touch on the thing about, like, the podcasting space and everything. I'm really worried about Democrats on that end. Obviously, the last two election cycles, I voted straight Democrat. I'm not going to vote Republican again. And so my real interest is helping Democrats, right? And winning the majority in the House and the Senate. This happened in the Republican Party, where there became this litmus test. And if you go outside of it or you have a different opinion, you lose donations, you lose sponsors, you lose whatever. And so you create a perfect environment for somebody like Trump to come along. For Democrats, look, I've experienced this with my Substack, right? You write something that's not exactly in line or perfect, and people will, I'm unsubscribing, right? I'm leaving. I thought you were different. And that is a scary thing because, frankly, if you want to be a big tent party and you have to be to win, you've got to welcome some opinions that are not exactly line up. I'm married, happily married. We don't agree on everything,
I'm going to make a small adjustment to my ring light. People saying I look too yellow. I don't want that. I don't want to look jaundiced today. I'm really interested in you saying you're never voting Republican again. Let me give you a little context for this, because this is a topic I plan to bring up. I've had Sarah Matthews on a couple times, who was deputy press secretary to Donald Trump towards the end alongside Kayleigh McEnany.
Great person.
And she basically said, I'm paraphrasing, that she is basically still kind of like a moderate Republican. And she didn't name these people, but I'll name them. If it was someone like a Mitt Romney or a John McCain or something like that, that would bring her right back to enthusiasm for the voting for those Republicans. Have your political views changed where you no longer see yourself even as like a moderate Republican?
No, look, I still believe what I've always believed, right? Now, the good thing when you kind of leave a party, so to speak, it gives you the flexibility to then kind of relook at what you believe, right? Because it would be like, let's take something like an issue that nobody knows much about, net neutrality, right? Okay, that's an issue. It was a big issue for a while. You kind of take a position based on, well, the party's kind of here, so I'm going to go there. And obviously you have pressure on issues. So it allows you to take a look at those things again. So I've even further moderated as a moderate Republican, um but the party completely changed, right? And why I say I guess I say I'd never vote Republican again, certainly not in the foreseeable future, because for me it's like, let's say a Mitt Romney comes along, okay? Ultimately, even though I think Mitt is an honorable person and would be a good president, ultimately, he would be enabling a structure or a party that has made it very clear that they do not believe anymore in liberal democracy. And until that is pulled out root and stem, until that is burned out of the party, which it will be someday if the party wants to survive, then I can't support that, right? And then who would you be putting in power? Let's say Mitt Romney wins. Who would be Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, all that stuff? People that went along with Donald Trump. And to me, that is an unforgivable sin as long as they continue to say what they did was right. So that's the battle. I mean, it's like, do I agree with Democrats on everything? Yeah, obviously not, but I don't think any Democrat agrees with the Democrats on everything. But I definitely want them to win because to me, I use the example, it's like being in a trench in Ukraine, okay? And I have a target, a bad guy 5 meters away and one 30 meters away. All of our attention should be focused on the guy that's 5 meters away. The 30-meter guy you can deal with later, right? And that's where we're at. The threat, the 5-meter is democracy. And all the stuff we may disagree on, I mean, we will sit around someday around a campfire because we don't have electricity anymore, wishing for the day we just simply disagreed on issues.
Do you have any opinion or sense of what is, quote, really going on with this sort of, how do I want to say it? There's this kind of like Groyper versus MAGA thing that's developing now, where people like Tucker Carlson have kind of treated with kid gloves this white nationalist Nick Fuentes. And even though I think now the president and vice president have denounced to some degree or done the whole, I don't know anything about it type of thing. Like, what do you think is not that Nick Fuentes is going to be the next nominee, he wouldn't even be old enough, but what do you think is the meaning of this thing that's kind of taking place here?
I'm glad you asked. And by the way, if you're a parent out there with a young kid, a young guy in your life, right? You're as a child, and it's appropriate, look at what they're doing online. And I think generally that's good advice, but like this is deeper than I think a lot of people realize, particularly among young men. And this is one of my passions that I'm trying to focus on is why are we losing men? Why is the definition of first off, masculinity is not toxic. There is toxic masculinity, but masculinity is a great thing. But the definition has become among these groypers like it's yelling, it's punching down, it's being mean to women, it's putting women in their place, right? And what we need is good male leaders to come along and talk about what real masculinity is. It's like punching up, it's fighting for a cause, taking care of your family, etc. So what you're seeing is that Groyper movement under Nick Fuentes kind of grew in the shadows because he used a lot of people's racial animus, animus against women. They talk about incels. So you get a lot of these guys that, I mean, we all in high school sometimes felt like we couldn't date women or whatever, but they used that anger and turned it into women don't deserve it. And so for a while, people have been kind of, by the way, Nick Fuentes went and had lunch with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. That's an important point to remember, with Kanye. But there's always been a firewall. On the far right, you had the elements of like racial Nazism, kind of like that. But there was a firewall in the right between that. So if a guy showed up like a neo-Nazi at a Republican party, they'd kick him out. That firewall is crumbling now. And the danger is because there's this saying in the GOP that like there are no enemies to the right. And what it means is if someone's to the right of you, common cause, they're an ally. And so you saw that with Heritage Foundation. You saw that with Tucker Carlson. And so what do I make of it? That this is a very dangerous moment where we are about to mainstream, or at least I will say somewhat acceptable, people that are straight up neo-Nazis and racists. I mean, look.
Maybe tolerance is the right word. There's a growing tolerance,
Yeah, a
if
growing
not embrace.
tolerance.
I don't know.
That's a good way to put it. Think about this, man. Did you ever imagine that we would be a country that said, no more immigration, okay, no more immigration, but we're happy to have immigrants that are white from South Africa? That's our new immigration policy, right?
Yeah.
Or you
Those
see
videos, by the way, the videos of the refugees from South Africa who are wearing cargo shorts and look like they're getting off of a mediocre cruise. It's surreal stuff.
It is surreal. And you know that, and who's the one driving that? Elon Musk. Why did Elon Musk kill USAID? Because it helps people that aren't white. I mean, that's what is really going on here. And I don't know, it's frightening. I never imagined the country would ever go back to like this.
Yeah. In thinking about 2028 a little, and I don't want to do a lot of this because I try to always keep my eyes on the next election, but I want to mention a little bit about it. In thinking about 2028, the polling is, this is J.D. Vance's. At the same time, rarely is the polling 3 years out indicative of who ends up being the nominee. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. But there's a movement that's been writing to me saying it's going to be like a Marco Rubio type person, someone adjacent to Trump. But I think if it's not Vance, I think it's because there's been a revolt against everything Trump touched, and it won't be Rubio either.
Yes.
So in my head, I'm trying to say, what's more likely? An extreme right winger, if it's not someone from Trump's inner circle, or someone like a Romney. And I don't actually know the answer because I don't know what the Republican voters want.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you'd asked me this question a couple of years ago, I probably would lean more towards the GOP is going to touch the stove and then learn its lesson. Now, I still believe that. I just think it's going to be way in the future. The Republican Party has to lose elections, right? That's the deal. They have to lose the presidential election in order to kind of wake up. So I think this is part of why Donald Trump is being so cagey about running for a third term. I want to be clear to everybody, Donald Trump will not be president again. He can't run for a third term. It is clear in the Constitution. They're trolling. But the second he says, yeah, I'm not going to run again, all of a sudden he's a lame duck. And now there's competition. You're already seeing this bubble up. You know, there was always this belief that like Rubio and Vance were buddies and they were going to run together. I'm already seeing stories leaked that Vance has leaked against Rubio, right? Particularly with Venezuela. And so that is going to be a battle in the party. And who is going to win? If I was a betting man and had to bet, I would say probably not JD Vance because he's not good, but somebody that like has that viewpoint. But I don't know, because Donald Trump is unique. He is uniquely able to like be shameless, and he's got a superpower. We have to admit it. And none of these guys have that. So the key is, who's going to be the Republican? I don't know, but Democrats have to win in 28, particularly not just for the country, but also to save the Republican Party from itself.
My view on the Democratic primary of 28 is, I say, get everybody in. I really think that the widest and most robust primary is going to put the party in the strongest position. And the truth is, there are some people dabbling here or that would be competing for some of the same voters. Like, for example, I think Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, and to a slightly lesser extent, Wes Moore, would be competing for a lot of the same voters. And you might think, oh, well, in that case, only one of them should run. No, I think anybody who wants to really should run here. And then if AOC is interested, have her run. I mean, I think the point of this is there really should be an evaluation where there are lots of choices. So no one can say we didn't really have a choice from X wing. And that will, I think, put whoever ultimately comes out on top in the strongest position to say, I really won it.
I agree. And I think that happens all the time. I mean, look, it's like putting somebody through the fire. Like, I know when I've had tough elections, I am much better at the art of politics after that tough election, because you're forced to do it. You're forced to, over and over and over, say what you believe. You're forced to raise money, which unfortunately is a requirement. And you're forced to go out and grab voters. Now, here's the thing. If you imagine this as Democrats, if you have like a conservative or centrist Democrat all the way to a big lefty Democrat, you've widened the aperture of people that are going to vote Democrat in a primary. Well, somebody that votes Democratic in a primary is very likely to vote Democratic in a general election. It is very rare. Now, one exception was Bernie, and a lot of people that voted for Bernie voted for Trump. But generally, if you are participating in a Democratic primary, you'll vote for the Democratic candidate. So let's say you had a conservative Democrat run, right? Like an old school conservative. They lose, but they still brought new people to pull a Democratic ballot for the first time. That is good for the party. That is good for the party.
To go back a little bit to your journey, just in the last few minutes we have, do you have an interest in getting back into elected politics?
Yes, and the but is, I want to make sure I'm not like, I don't want to go in just to get a position and just to be somebody. It's if I think I can make a real difference, and if there's a need, because I've done 12 years in elected office. That's a long time. It goes by really quick. But I know I still have that burning passion, right, to fight for the country. I talk about the issue of men, the issue that Democrats are losing union voters, by the way, which is unthinkable. I was a big union Republican, and so yeah, I could see myself getting back involved. At what position, what office? No clue.
I have a couple friends I'm thinking of who are in industries where they immediately run to any former members of the House or Senate that they believe can make important connections for them.
Mhm.
And I was stunned when one friend in particular told me, hey, this elected official and this former elected official, we've cut them checks for high 6 figures or 7 figures just for individual introductions that let us make obviously much more than that. The influence peddling revolving door is really something.
It is. And I want to be clear. I don't do that. And the thing that is it, you can make, if I'd have gotten out and decided to do that, to do like the lobbying consulting thing, you can make $5-10 million pretty easy. Which is insane. But the problem is, and this is why it's so bad. It's not, look, people that are prosecutors end up becoming defense lawyers. People that are in the military end up going to, private sector. Okay, it happens, and politics is the same. The problem where it gets bad is, okay, so let's say all the January 6th stuff, right? There were a lot of people that weren't running again that didn't speak out. Why didn't they speak out? They weren't running again. I talk about the other 9 impeachers, right? 7 out of 9 of them didn't run for office again. But why didn't they speak out? Because the second you alienate the party, you get rid of your ability to call up that person that company needs you to call up, and you become less effective. So you're taking a hit to your own financial well-being. That's why people decide not to run again. And that's why, instead of being like, it's not courageous, just telling the truth, they go quiet. That's why.
I want to make sure any of my Substack followers who are here make sure to follow Adam Kinzinger's Substack. I'd be humbled if your followers also did the same with mine.
My followers, go to Pakman here, follow him.
The documentary is The Last Republican, debuted as the #1 documentary on Apple TV, and it's on all the streaming networks. So glad we were able to do this, and I really appreciate talking to you, and I hope we get a chance to do it again.
Anytime. Good talking to you, and everybody, thank you for tuning in.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
You bet.
Take care. Bye.
Every time you Google your name, you will probably find dozens of sites that expose your personal information. This can include phone number, home address, family details. It's just sitting there waiting to be scraped or abused. Incogni is a privacy service. They go after these sites on your behalf. They contact the data brokers. They demand your data be removed, which the brokers are legally required to do. Incogni will automatically remove your information from hundreds of the biggest and most notorious data broker sites, But you're not just limited to those. You can use Incogni's custom removal. If you find your info on a website outside of Incogni's default list, the team at Incogni will work to get that information removed. This is how you protect yourself and your family from identity theft, financial scams, harassment, even AI-powered profiling by ad companies. And Incogni's data removal process is the only one verified independently by Deloitte. This gives them a unique level of credibility. Try Incogni risk-free and get 60% off when you go to incogni.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman. The link is in the description. Let's be honest, when it is hot outside the way it's been, bad underwear makes it really much worse. Our sponsor, Sheath Underwear, has completely rethought how men's underwear should function in the heat. Sheath's boxer briefs are designed with a dual pouch system, keeping everything in place, separate, ventilated. This means less sweat, less sticking, less of that awkward adjusting. And if you're not using the pouches, the fabric alone is a game changer. Soft, stretchy, moisture wicking, now available in cooling materials like bamboo and mesh. I wear these at the gym during long work days, especially when I know it's going to be hot outside. It just keeps you dry and comfortable. And they've really raised my expectations about how good underwear can be. Wearing Sheath is like having built-in climate control for the lower half of your body. Everything stays cool, dry, and where it should be. If you've never thought much about your underwear, this is the one brand that might make you start. Go to sheathunderwear.com/Pakman. Use the code Pakman for 20% off. The link is in the description. Donald Trump was interviewed on a sports show hosted by former football player Pat McAfee. Now, I don't have a problem with sports shows interviewing presidents. I don't have a problem with presidents being interviewed by sports shows. I don't really have a problem with any of it. What I do have a problem with is a nutty, sycophantic interview where Trump comes in and the guy who's asking the questions knows not a damn thing about politics, and the interview becomes about politics, and Trump is allowed with absolutely no skepticism and no questioning whatsoever to spread debunked and deranged lies to an audience that I hope knows better, but I simply don't know. The host, Pat McAfee, certainly doesn't seem to know any better. Trump says the quiet part out loud, just like to set the stage. Trump goes, the only reason I'm even doing this is because you blow smoke up my whatever. You say great things about me.
It is our honor, live from Paris Island, to say, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now for the first time ever, the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Yeah!
Mr. President.
Yeah!
Hello, Pat. Hi, Pat.
So most people would think with our show that this would be an impressionist of the president because no president would actually join us. But on this Veterans Day, we want to say, Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. And I'm only joining you because I hear you say such nice things about me from your very large audience. I've always heard you've said such nice things. So when people say nice about me, I join. When they don't say nice about me, I take a pass.
Okay.
That's not a joke. I mean, listen, it's the most honest I think I've ever heard Donald Trump be. He wants easy interviews. And sometimes even his easy interviews don't go particularly well. And that probably applies here. Trump is spouting all sorts of nonsense during this interview. And at the end of this clip, the host, Pat McAfee, actually says, I don't know a thing about politics. I'm completely out of my element. I am not equipped for this. Essentially, he shouldn't be doing this.
People that came, we have $17 trillion plus being invested in our country.
That's a lie.
Many times more than any country has ever had. We don't want to be wasting time. So they tried to basically renegotiate the great, big, beautiful deal. They weren't able to get it. And now they said, let's close up our country and we'll see if we can get it. But again, getting it for people that came into our country illegally from prisons, from gangs, from mental institutions.
Of course, that's also not true.
From, places that you don't want, and giving them $1.5 trillion in medical costs and things. You just can't do this. You can't do it. And it ruins it for everybody else. So they were not successful in renegotiation, and it looks like it's going to be opened up. But you're right. It's the House has to vote, and then, of course, I have to sign it.
Okay, so once again, I don't know your guys' world. I assume everything you just said there will have some people very pissed about it, and then obviously the rest of the world, United States of America, will be very excited that the government is back open. So I think that deserves a big hoorah!
There you go. Really incisive stuff. Now, again, I would love it if we had a president who was able to call into a show like this and go, listen, Pat, I love your commentary about football, and I love that you were doing this show this show on Veterans Day from Parris Island. You're there with some of our troops. We support the troops. We love the troops. Thank you to everyone for their service. Thanks to them, I didn't have to be drafted. Whatever, right? That would be fine. But Trump calls in to lie nonstop and transforms it into political propaganda, which he should be ashamed about, and Pat McAfee is completely ill-equipped to actually deal with. Trump was asked, what does Veterans Day mean to you? And Trump talks about his approval rating.
Thanks. Even though we're just sports stooges, for you, what does Veterans Day mean, especially now that you're commander-in-chief again?
Well, to me, it means taking care of the veterans because they've taken care of us. And, we have a 92% approval rating at the VA. And I just got back from making a speech. It was beautiful. The whole surrounding, the whole, I don't know if you've got to witness it a little bit on television, but it was something. And the veterans have taken such good care of us. What I think of with the veterans is how do I take care of the veterans? And we've done a really good job. Doug Collins, as you know, is the secretary. And we have a tremendous
Anyway, what does Veterans Day mean to you? I have a 92% approval rating with the VA. And then finally, sort of like a throwaway moment, Trump is asked, what are your favorite sporting events? So like one answer would be, oh, I really like the Super Bowl. Trump figures out a way to talk about how he actually is the winner of the 2020 election.
You've obviously been afforded the opportunity to go to some of the best sporting events, over the last, over your lifetime, I suppose. But we saw you, in the Yankees clubhouse on 9/11, which was awesome. A bunch of different big-time college football games, Army-Navy included. You were just at the Ryder Cup, obviously the NFL game. Is there one sporting event that either you haven't been to yet that you'd like to go to, or is there one where you, are thinking like, man, if I could have the opportunity to experience that for the first time again, I would love to do that?
Well, you're going to see, I was able to bring in my first term, sign up the World Cup. So you're going to have the World Cup and you're going to have the Olympics. I never did the Olympic thing, so we're going to have both the Olympics. I signed both of them up. I never thought I'd go to see him as president, but then we had an election that there was a little hanky-panky going on, as you say. And
there you go.
Now all of a sudden...
Remember, what were your favorite sporting events?
I'm the president during those two. And then, of course, we have the 250th year, which, the anniversary thing, which is big. I do have to say, look, I like them all. I love sports. But I do have to say, and I'll probably get myself in a little trouble with this, I hate the kickoff.
Oh, come on, Mr. President.
That's weird. I think it's so terrible. I think it's so demeaning. And I think it hurts the game. It hurts the pageantry. I've told that to Roger Goodell. And I don't think it's any safer. I mean, you still have guys crashing into each other. And it's so, it's the opposite of what the game. The ball is in the air and nobody's moving.
All right. So Trump now talking about the kickoff rule, which, by the way, I might agree with him about the kickoff rule. I don't know. But what sporting events do you like the most? They took the 2020 election from me. So I want to hear your take on this. My view after reviewing a lot of this interview is the problem isn't the venue. It's okay for presidents to call into sports shows. The problem is that he's doing his lying propaganda rantings rather than actually simply saying it's Veterans Day. Thank you to the troops and the veterans for your service. Thanks to Pat for doing the show where you're doing the show. That's not what it was. And then Pat McAfee, he just can't handle it. He's in way over his head. That's the problem I have with it. It is not a problem in principle. It's a problem in execution. Money cannot buy class. And if there is any greater proof of that, it is Donald Trump personified during part 2 of what is truly the most bizarre interview I've ever seen with Donald Trump. Fox News host Laura Ingraham walked around the White House with Trump, where he told her about how he's redesigning the White House. There's a lot of gold paint. There's a lot of marble and gaudy different things. This is truly, this reminded me of something that I hadn't thought about for a while. Trump would much rather just be doing his building stuff with daddy's money, which, by the way, would have done better if he just put it in the S&P 500 than done a single building project, but that's a different story. Trump doesn't want to be negotiating peace deals, which he's terrible at anyway. Trump doesn't want to be working in the economy and with the constraints that exist at the global level. Trump wants to be picking stone. That's what this is fundamentally about. Here is Trump talking about the presidential walk of fame that he's putting in place at the White House. And when asked whose idea was it, he goes, of course, it was my idea.
Democrat heads will explode in 3, 2, 1.
The new ballroom will go from here to there, and it'll seat a proper number of people, and the White House will finally have, after 150 years, the ballroom that they wanted. You know what? They've waited 150 years, and the public is paying for nothing. The public is paying for absolutely nothing. It's all being done by donors. All the way over to there, it'll be beautiful. One of the most beautiful.
Laura Ingram's stunned, wow, is just too much.
Beautiful in the world. Come on. Okay? A lot of people don't know that. They don't say that there's no cost. That's some room. Weird.
That's unbelievable.
Now I'm going to show you. So this is the Presidential Walk of Fame.
Now, whose idea was this?
My idea. Everything's my idea.
Everything's your idea. Okay.
Yeah, sadly.
Who's that guy?
That's Barack Hussein Obama.
Okay.
This is Biden right here.
Wait a second. The profile of Biden.
So he's the worst president in the history of our country, and Barack Hussein Obama is top 5, meaning bad.
Are you going to replace that with his actual photo?
No, I don't think so.
And what they're talking about is that where there would be a picture of Biden, there's just a picture of the auto pen. Everything is my idea, Trump says, until it backfires, at which point it wasn't. He doesn't know a thing about it. Who did this? Let's fire someone. Trump talking about thick bronze. This is what he cares about, folks. If you're wondering, is this a man who's concerned with what's happening to the farmers? When he talks about thick bronze, you know that he is not.
A lot of people are wondering which child would be the best.
In a certain way, they all could. Take a look at this, fellas. You want to see detail. So, like this sign. Most people would just do a sign, they paint it on the wall. So that's half-inch thick bronze.
Okay, this is the gaudiest sign. It's that stupid script, sort of pseudo cursive font that Trump loves in shiny gold. It is so crass and gaudy. And it is again a reminder that it doesn't matter how many billions Trump has. It's not going to buy class.
Carved by a very talented person. And it's brass, it's pure brass. It's half-inch thick brass. And you can't just do that. That's, you look at that, that's quality, right?
It really takes some skill to come up with that stupid-looking gold lettering. Trump kind of admits that his greatest strength is building ballrooms at the end of the day. That's really that's really a better thing for him. Oh no, do I not have that clip? We'll have to come back to that. Laura Ingram asks, where do you get the stone for this stuff? And Trump goes, different places.
And now you can have news. That's the same stone as the White House. So now you can have news conferences. You can, nobody could stand in the mud.
Where did you get the stone?
Different places.
Different places?
Yeah. But I'll show you something. This is the equivalent of what I do with the ballroom. I built many ballrooms and many buildings, and that's my greatest strength. Actually, I might as well do this. So
there you go. Okay, so this was the clip. My greatest strength is building ballrooms. I might as well just be doing this. Laura Ingram, with no question, too sycophantic not to ask it. She goes, you have such attention to architectural detail. How did you get so good at architectural detail? Hey, what about you went to court to try to keep food stamps from people? That should be the question.
Steel. And the Marble Man said, I said, do you think you could book match your event? He said, yeah, look at the other one over there, book match. But look at the quality of that job.
Where do you think you developed the attention to architectural detail?
It's a gag-worthy question. It's vomitous. Where do you think you developed the attention to architectural detail?
What age did you start realizing that's what you could do?
Yeah, I was involved with my father in building and all this stuff, and my father was a builder. So as a little boy, I'd be sitting there playing with blocks, I guess, and my father would be on the phone, and I'd be listening, I guess. And, you listen. I had a father who was very good at building. He was very good at building things, and so am I. I build better than anybody else. Nobody can build like me.
But was he
You can ask Steve Witkoff. Who is the best builder? He will tell you.
Did your dad have the same attention to the specific details that you did?
Well, he built low, moderate income houses.
So it was a different type of
So he didn't
build.
have to do a floor like that.
You seem extremely particular about the water pressure in your bidet, sir. Is that something that you believe is instinct or something you learned from your father?
He'd do a floor out of tile, linoleum at the time they used to call it, and it would be a different kind of a thing. But he had a tremendous attention to quality. In other words, if it's going to be even, a regular floor, it would be exactly even, exactly straight.
Exactly. And as you can tell, this is obviously the guy that should be president. One final clip from this part of the interview, and then I want to get to something more serious from it. Laura Ingraham also asking, where are the speakers? Because I hear music playing. Where are the speakers?
Pretty cool, right?
Where are your speakers? Because I heard this.
All here.
They're in the bushes?
They're all here.
When did you decide you were a frustrated DJ? How long ago was that?
I don't do that much, but I think having good sound is important because we do now news conferences on this space. As you know, you were probably a victim to it. You'd stand in the grass, your high heels would be ruined. The women are, walking out without. So I had to make it a hard surface. So I made it the same color as the White House itself.
Exactly. The high heels were a real problem. They would sink into the dirt. So I decided to turn this entire thing into a gaudy mess. All right. One more moment from the actual interview part. Trump got very sweaty during this. And consider the number of lies in this brief discussion about the economy.
I wouldn't want to say, because that gives that person an immediate boost. It's like when they say, are you going to attack Venezuela? Are you going to attack this one? Are you going to attack... I say, I'm not going to tell you whether or not I am, so I don't want to really give you, but I think we are doing phenomenally well. This is the greatest economy we've ever had. Their talking points, of course they're high, of course they're high. By the way, the only thing is beef.
Coffee.
Is a little high because the ranchers are doing great. Coffee, we're going to lower some tariffs.
We're going to lower coffee.
Have some coffee come in. We're going to take care of all this stuff very quickly, very easily.
A good question would be, we basically don't grow coffee in the United States. Why did we put tariffs on it to begin with? Trump is now like, oh, no, we're going to deal with the problem with the coffee tariffs. Oh, yeah, well, you also created the problem.
It's surgical. It's beautiful to watch. But our costs are way lower. Now, Walmart came out with a...
Walmart. I love that. Walmart. How does he even... That is a fascinating linguistic... What was that?
It's beautiful to watch. But our costs are way lower. Now, Walmart came out with a statement that they do every year for many, many decades. And they said that a Thanksgiving meal costs 25% less.
Anyway, so that's been debunked. Walmart put together a Thanksgiving meal with, or I should say, Walmart put together a Thanksgiving meal with fewer items. And then they're like, okay, if we strip a bunch of the stuff that's normally in it and shrink the size, the price is down 25%. It's completely meaningless, folks. We know groceries are up about 3% since Trump took over. It's just whacked. What a bizarre interview. What a truly bizarre interview here. And Laura Ingraham loves it because she's getting access to hang out at the White House. We've got a phenomenal bonus show for you today. Sign up at joinpakman.com. I will see you there.